All right, masterclass series, building the $1 million blueprint for your fitness center or wellness center. So thanks for joining. Remember, these sessions are designed to complement the things that you do with your strategic coach, that you do with your managers, so that you have the knowledge and the information so you can have great conversations that are going to level up your business. So remember to share this information and content with your team so that you're speaking that of the same language, so that you can problem solve together, that you can build together. And that's what these are all about. I say this every week, strategy versus tactics. We're focusing more on the bigger umbrella, which is the strategy, and not necessarily all the individual tactics. When we look at the key strategies for your business, we look at our people, we look at the product, the fulfillment, the sales, the marketing, the execution, and the finance. So we've been really hovering a lot on people, and this is actually the last week that we're going to be focusing on people. And next week, we're actually shifting to the product. There's, especially this day and age, there is no lack. There's absolutely no lack of resources out there. So where the rubber meets the road is being resourceful. What do we do with this information? A lot of us are going to listen. We might even reflect. The big winners are going to be able to take action on something. It doesn't have to be major. You don't have to shift your whole entire business from one thing that you hear, but there might be something, one little call that you need to make, an email that you need to send, a person that you need to talk to. Action is what creates the ideal world that you're looking to, right? The ideal business that you're looking for. All right. Let's see. A little tip, if you don't already, it's good to have a notebook for any type of learnings that you have, whether it's digital, whether it's online, whether it's paper. That way you can house. The key thing for note taking is to be able to refer back to it. Because if you just have tons and tons of notes and you don't like, oh, I know I took a note on that somewhere, how do I find it? And you can't get to it, that becomes less valuable. So keep that in mind when you're building your systems of organization. All right, this is what we've done so far. We found the vision, we found the mission, how to develop that within your organization. Number two is we developed an accountability and organizational chart. We built a recruiting pipeline. We found the right team members. We did the onboarding of your team. And last week, we learned how to keep your team members long-term. So there's one more piece of this whole people part, and that is performance management. So I retitled it to Unlocking the Potential. And the reason for that is sometimes performance management has a negative connotation. But as we go through here, we're going to remember that we need a culture of performance management. And I'll get more into that. Okay. Because this is how you're going to get the best out of your people. This is how you're going to give the best to your members. And this is how you're going to have a company that really thrives. Who doesn't want a thriving company? All right. So we have it met. My name is Andrew. I build fitness centers and teach others how to do the same. How do we build great fitness centers? By hiring the right people and building and lifting them up, right? That's my whole thing, is I really enjoy the gyms, the stretch labs. That's cool. But I really like when people grow. That's really kind of what gets me out of bed every day. And that's where I'm privileged to be able to talk with all of you today and be part of this group. So thanks for being part of all this. That's a little bit about me. All right. So today's objectives, there's two things. Number one is how a culture of performance management can literally transform your gym and studio. And number two is we're going to talk about the 4-week plan to coach someone up or out. All right. So the first part is, how do we really put it into our culture? It's an everyday thing. And number two is, okay, sometimes there's people we've got to be a little bit more monitoring and find out if they're truly the right fit for the teams. Lots of good stuff. And of course, a lot of sharp edges that we have to create here. All right. So what is performance management? Let's actually get some feedback from the room. Let's see. We've got, why don't we just use our chat box today? Chat box, lower right-hand corner. What are some components? What is performance management? How do you look at it? Thoughts on performance management. I'll give you a second. After you type it in, just hit enter or hit that little arrow. Don't forget to hit enter. All right. Thank you, Chad, for your participation. Oh, wait, that's something different. Cheryl, thank you. Managing a staff to perform. Got it. Bridget, follow the daily procedures, working towards this. Good. All right. Thank you two for participating. Chad, let's get them some bubble gum if we have it. Xavier, thank you. Measuring the effectiveness of our team. Great. All right. So let's get some clarity around it. So we're talking the same language. Performance management has a couple criteria. Number one is planning. Number two is monitoring. 3 is assessing. And 4 is improving. So it's nothing about, when we think performance management, we think accountability, we think negative. It's really all about helping people get better at what they do and giving them feedback. Think about it almost, if you use MyZone in your clubs, MyZone and monitors hearts, and how engaged your members get when they have that feedback, right? When you have feedback, it's very good. When you give them a plan. So these are the same type of things. You want to be able to give your team members feedback on what's important so that they feel that they can thrive in your environment. All right. So that's just the simplest version. Even simpler, everybody gets a number. And I don't mean everybody has a number, is a number like in a big corporation. What I mean is performance management is there's a target that they need to, for example, trainers, service sessions might be a target because that shows efficiency. And in order to be full as a coach, you need to have sales. Front of the house, it might be membership units. It might be draft. Everybody should have a number that they're being measured off of, and they can see it regularly. Okay, so think about it that way. So here's basic ways of managing performance. And you've seen this before. We go into greater detail on some of our leadership calls. This first pillar is going to be to set clear and agreed expectations. Think about any of your relationships with team members, personal. It's all about, sorry, Rob, to hear that. It's all about having communication, right? Think about a relationship that you had that broke down. I guarantee a big part of it could have been saved, preserved if there was a greater communication. So all we're saying is on this first pillar, communicate the crap out of something. And remember, you're working with different generations, different experiences, different backgrounds, the whole kit and caboodle. Just the way you hear something, just the way you see something, doesn't mean the other person sees the same thing. For those of you who are with us in New Orleans, we talked about creating our own realities and some of the studies that have been done. We're all looking at the same color dress. What we thought was the same. Half the room sees it as gold, half the room sees it as blue. How is that possible? It's the way our brain interprets information. So whenever you get frustrated, hey, I told them something, you've got to look in the mirror and say, it just didn't land. We've got to look at a different way to say the same thing. So key word here is agreed. In the past, or if you're newer to leadership and management, we tend to want to tell somebody, Chad, this is what you need to do this month. You need to get 20 memberships and you need to make 50 calls a day. That is definitely a methodology that can be used. However, it's less likely for it to get done. There has to be, because if Chad's thinking in his mind, gosh, I've been averaging 2 calls a day. How am I going to go to 50? Because I'm Chad's boss, he's going to say yes, but deep down, he's got no intention of doing it. So therefore, I got to get Chad to talk about it. And then we realized his schedule was off and he wasn't prioritizing. So now Chad has the confidence, maybe not to do 50 this month, but maybe he can do 40, 45. So we agree on it. We settle on it. So that way it's his goal, not mine. Very important. It's his goal, not mine. And be clear, you don't want to cheat this one. Don't want to leverage hey, I'm the owner, I'm the manager, and talk in a way in which Chad doesn't feel safe. Okay, Andy, I'll do it. So we got to make sure it's really an open conversation. We'll talk more about that in another call. Okay, so step 1, set clear and agreed upon expectations. If you're not getting your results with your team members, start and look at that. Step 2, all right, Chad's got to make some calls. He's got to sell some memberships. Does he have the necessary tools? What do you think I mean by tools? Bridget, what do you think I mean by tools for Chad making his calls and selling his memberships?
I would say like the support like in terms of helping him time block or making sure that he has all the necessities within his day to be able to make those phone calls?
Excellent point said. So it's not just about the scripting. It's not just about a physical phone. Has Chad been taught how to structure his day? Does he know why he needs to structure his day? Things like that. So make sure your team members have the tools necessary to get there. If you want them to build you a big old patio and you don't give them even something as simple as a wheelbarrow, it's going to be really hard to get that patio done. All right. All right. Then the final piece of this, there's only 3, so it's easy, is to follow up. Right. That becomes very important for future projects, but also we want to inspect what we expect. Because if we get agreed upon expectations, we give them the tools, but we never follow up, what do you think is going to happen next time we have agreed upon, right? If I don't follow up regularly. So that's where step 4 is probably, in my experience, the most missed step here, right? They set some goals. They get better at having agreed upon goals. They get them the tools necessary, but then the whirlwind happens and we don't follow up. So make sure that there's a follow-up already built in there. And that's where we'll get into the next slide, which is, when is performance management really done? And well, there's daily, there's weekly, monthly, and there's quarterly. You might even add a yearly in there. And within that, if you're following our meeting rhythms, that's highly recommended, right? You're going to have a daily huddle with your team every single day. It should be about 5 to 8 minutes. Every single week, you should be meeting with your team one-on-one and doing a weekly WIG meeting. Every month, there should be some sort of, okay, how do we do this last month? A kickoff call, if you will. Where's the direction of the team, of the company, of everything? And then quarterly, usually with your leadership team, you're going to dive in a little bit deeper. All right. So this is performance management, happens every single day. Some of you probably did it today. Okay. All right. So what do we performance manage? There's a lot of things. All right. It's the things that are important to the organization. The number one, probably sales. You're probably going to want to performance manage sales. You're going to want to manage service and really any agreed upon expectation that is important for you right now. Maybe you're doing a pre-sale, so it's going to be a little bit different. Maybe you're doing a remodel, so it's going to be a little different. I'm sure there's going to be sales and service built into there, but that's what we want to performance manage. All right. One thing that I'll say is, don't want to performance manage everything, right? Because then if everything is, quote, important, then nothing's important. So make sure that you're performance managing the things that are most important for your organization. Okay. Should be the top 20%. All right. 5 things to keep in mind when you're doing performance management. Number 1 is you want to focus. This is some tips. You want to focus on the strengths of the individual, not the weaknesses. Build up the strengths, not the weaknesses. Number 2 is you want to facilitate and make things easier. So as a leader, you want to get things out of people's way so that they can do the things that they're supposed to and agreed upon to do. So we don't want to add things on their plate if we agreed the most important thing is X. And by the way, I want you to do X, Y, Z and something else. Make sure you're taking and facilitating a clear path for them. Next is you want to bring out the best in people, similar to focusing on the strengths. And then you want to, this is a good one, is right questions versus right answers. Right questions versus right answers. Bridget, what do you think I mean by right questions versus right answers?
I would say, like, I'm trying to like process it right now. Like, I have an idea in my head, but it's like asking the right questions for the situation at hand and make sure we're like staying on the topic or the process, rather than asking something that's not related and then that's not going to help you out at the end.
No, I think we can build upon that. Let's look at some Xavier's feedback. Xavier, what do you think? Questions versus right answers?
What I'm hearing from that really is that, are we getting just what we want to hear possibly, or getting like being yes to that in a way? Are we keeping the main thing and making sure we're targeting at what we actually need to answer? What is the real problem that we're trying to solve?
Yeah, I think that last piece, what Xavier said, hits a key component here. are we even talking? What are we even talking about here? Is this even the right thing to be talking about? So let's say, hey, I got this great idea. We're going to do this referral play. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to give away a cruise and everything. And so the question is, tell me a little bit more about that. What is your thought process behind that? And how is that going to help us get to our target? Right. So by asking better questions, rather than saying, no, Xavier, that's not a good idea. Why don't you try this? The idea is we really want to make sure that we're talking about the right things, questions. Just like what we do with motivational interviewing, we teach our team to ask great questions. Tell me more about that. How does that make you feel? Same process here, asking those right questions. Phil, you've raised your hand.
Yeah, it seems to me, it depends on who you're talking to. I notice that when I walk into the front office where our manager is, or into the trainer's office where our MXM is, they're going to respond to whatever I say. They stop doing what they're doing. They want to know. If I go in to say something versus ask something, it's going to get a completely different response. And I need to know what their lead measure is at the moment. So if I'm going to ask a question, I'll ask about that. And then that gets them thinking about their lead measure or their WIG instead of whatever it is that I want to ramble on about. So it seems to me that the right questions are going to be determined by the plan you have, the 4DX. And then the questions you ask are directed by that. And it's about getting them to think about what they need to be thinking about. That's why you ask the question. It's not about them responding to something random from the boss.
That's a great point, Phil. So do you find it natural for you to ask questions, or do you find it more natural for you to want to give them answers?
Oh, they both come very easy.
Yep.
I can provide answers all day long, but questions are easy to do. I don't have any trouble with them.
Yes. Formulating the right question. And I like what you said earlier, Phil, is it's about getting your team members to think, because if they're thinking and then you're teaching them how to think, that means you're going to have less management later because they've learned the process, right?
Yeah, I had an experience yesterday. We went out on a club visit. I think Rob's on this call. We went out and spent some time with him, but it was a 90-minute drive. And on the way out, I had the audio book for DX, and we're just introducing our staff. This is brand new. We're like in our second week here. But for an hour, we listened to the book, and I turned off the tape as we're pulling into the parking lot, and I asked them to tell me what does WIG mean, and they couldn't tell me.
They didn't know yet.
So I got to ask that question again and again until they get the right answer.
Yes. So good. That's a great point, Phil. So you're bringing up something that I've been not criticized for, but noted that sometimes I'll quiz they feel like it's a quiz. Hey, Phil, what's 4DX? Hey, Phil, what's a WIG meeting? Hey, what's a commitment versus? Those are questions to, again, elicit thinking, which I love, and different than a question that is walk me through your thought process on X, Y, or Z. So did you learn? Did you listen? And then, of course, are you able to apply that information? Okay. All right. Good. Let's see. We got one more piece here is we got to make sure it empowers accountability for success and failures. Empower accountability for success. And I'm a big believer in accountability. We'll talk more about that into the future. All right. Chad is going to do a quick commercial break for 30 seconds while I remove the dog from the room who's whining. All right. Chad.
All right. Quick commercial break. One of the things that I'm hearing here is that when things don't sink in with your team members, who is responsible for that? Is it the team member? Is it the owner? Is it a combination of both? And I think Phil nailed it on the head. You listen to a book in the car, you park the car, you ask what a WIG is, and people don't know. And so I think it's healthy for us to revisit things that really matter and get an understanding of why didn't it land? Was it not explained right? Were they not listening? But at the end of the day, it's our responsibilities as leaders to make sure things land. Commercial done.
All right. Thank you, Chad, for that. All right, moving on. So as we look at so we're closing off the door now. I think we got the ideas that performance management really needs to be part of how you lead, okay? How you run your business and building it into the culture. And it's got to be consistent. We can't one week we've got some targets, and then 3 weeks later, we try it again. It's got to be consistent. And that's where when we talk about rhythm, right? We talk about cycles. It's part of nature. So when you have a rhythm to your weekly one-on-ones, weekly WIG meetings, your daily huddles, this makes and I always say that the heartbeat of your business is your meetings. And that's how all this information gets pushed out and received back. All right. Now we shift though, and when does performance management get a little bit more official? This one gets a little prickly because now we're talking about something that has to be addressed more than once. Okay, we talked about this already now, Chad, about those phone calls, and now we're talking about it again and maybe even again. So this is where we have to shift it into a little bit more official. Also, when it's blatant policy violations, right, then we have to move into a performance management situation, okay? And some would refer to this as a PIP, performance improvement plan. Some would call it a write-up. It's performance management, however you like to call it, okay? So before we get into that, remember, let's go back in time just a minute to make sure that the preliminary work was done. We want to protect everybody, and you got to have your HR basics down. Remember, if you need our handbook, we have all of that. Obviously, you want to adjust it to your company, but you make sure that you have your laws and regulations. That's clear. You write documentations of your team members, employee handbook that describes the things that are necessary. Because a lot of times when you're doing these performance improvement plans, you actually want to cite parts of the employee handbook that they know, okay? So that becomes very helpful when you do that, okay? Let's see. Also, make sure the hiring and onboarding was done correctly, payroll and compensation, things that we've talked about. So those are the things that we want to just check the boxes. Now we can go ahead and get into the 3 stages of performance management, all right? Stage 1 is going to be a verbal conversation. And let's just back up. It's really important that you have this with your plan, because especially as you scale, you want to make sure that every manager knows this. If they're in charge of somebody, just in case you can't have your hands on everything, make sure they know, hey, first one is a verbal conversation if it's the same issue. The easy one is being tardy, right? Being late, not showing up just because it's an easy black and white situation. Verbal conversation. Number 2 is then we move into a write-up and or performance improvement plan, okay? And then lastly is going to be that final warning. I'll give you one last shot, and if this doesn't correct, there is no longer a job here for us, okay? Not on this team. Keep in mind, though, even on your verbal communication, and I've been burnt by this, so I'm going to pass this off to you, is you want to make sure that you have it documented. Whether you, document it in your own journal, or even better, you email it. You say, hey, listen, Chad, just wanted to give a follow-up to our call and the details. If you're using your Fathoms or whatever note takers, you send them that so that they have it there. Because remember, just because I'm speaking it to you doesn't mean it's getting into your head yet. Now, if you were to read it, it might help reinforce that, or look at the video again. So that's where make sure any verbal conversation, you do have some sort of document style. All right. Any questions on that? Oh yeah, just one story I had listed here is, no, I'll say that story for another time. All right, here's a tool for you. So what this is, what are we even talking about here? So if it's CPR, so I'll just put them all out here. So it's content, pattern, relationship. This is where team members are going to really pull you along the way. And I was a team member before, and I was a difficult one. So I was very good at pulling my boss off the path. So number 1 is content. And so if I'm late, if the content is you're late, okay? Now, the second time that you're late, it's no longer the fact that you're late. What is the problem? What am I even talking about now? You're late twice in 1 week. What do you think, Bridget?
That's becoming a pattern.
Oh, actually, yeah, that's good. Deductive reasoning is right there in front of you. Thank you. So yeah, it's a pattern, right? So I'm not concerned about I'm concerned about the lateness, but now we got to talk about the pattern. So first I need to talk about hey, you were late. Now I need to talk about twice. And now the big one, this is the R word, relationship, which is also synonymous with trust, right? CPT is not as catchy as CPR. So relationship. What happens now is we've talked about this twice, and now we have a pattern. This is the 3rd time. So now everything that you do unfortunately, my mind is going to be not trusting it because you told me you were going to be on time. You told me you were going to make these phone calls. You told me this or that, and we agreed upon it, and now it's not getting done. So we are at a red alarm right now, and this is most likely we were have to go to a final conversation. Okay, so use this as a tool. It was very helpful for me because team members, again, I'm guilty of it, will, oh no, this time it was legit. I was like, this lady, she was walking across the street. I had to help her. She fell over. The thing is, this is the third time this has happened in a week. How many ladies are falling in the middle of the street? I don't know. Utilize that to your will. How to write a performance improvement plan. If you don't have an HR background, it's important to get this part right because there's a couple of nuances. So here's the situation. A team member hits 60% of their membership goal. 25% of new members are booked with a coach, and they're averaging 10 sales calls a day. So what a good performance, this is a very basic one. I'm going to show you right now. There you go. Yeah, I'm just going to hit the highlights, the key points here. All right. Number one is usually it's about 30 days. So this is the written kind of warning. And Jane Smith, it's behaviors and action. So with your behaviors, you don't want to write this when you're hot. Mentally hot, because you're just going to spew out a bunch of stuff. You want to take out all emotion and just spit out the facts. And I didn't have this when I was younger. It would have been so helpful. ChatGPT takes out all the emotion. You just write it. Hey, you can write in all the emotion you want. I'm so frustrated with this person. I cannot believe blah, blah, blah. And then ChatGPT will take that and just make it very professional, and you'll be in good shape. Okay. Only put the key things that are like top ones. Don't put like 10 or 12. And here's a personal recommendation, which I've seen before. I would put like maybe 4 and like straight up, like obviously, oh my goodness. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I'm not doing that. And then one little one that has a little bit of, wait a second. No, all of a sudden that negates the whole write-up. The whole entire experience is gone because you're only 90% right on that one. So and then the conversation just blows up. So if you think there's a little bit of gray area, just cross that one out. You probably have enough of other things to talk about. That's my little tip there. Okay. Now, the next part about this is the action needs to relate directly to the behavior. So in this situation, past 30 days, Jane Smith averaged 10 sale calls per day work. So very factual. All right. We all have our CRMs. We can see that. It's black and white. Now, moving forward, what we want is, bam, barest minimum. Jane must make at least 50 calls a day, or 250 a week. So direct correlation between those two. Second one, out of 10 memberships, Jane sold 4. Out of 10 memberships, Jane Smith sold 4. 25% were booked. So 25% were booked on an FC. So that's very black and white. Your CRM says it. So then we go to our action step. Okay. So this is your most basic that you have. We have some templates if you need them. And again, ChatGPT will also help you, but just even when ChatGPT writes them, make sure that it falls under that criteria. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Remember, if you're having team members, general managers, managing directors, you're having them do this, make sure they're taught, like everything rolls through Travis in my organization. He makes sure that all the write-ups are done consistent to the way that we do it. And so that way we know that we're covering our butts. Actually, is Travis on the call right now? Did I see his face? No, he's probably busy. He's multitasking. Anyways, so just again, you're teaching people that you're the owner. You want to make sure you don't want to have your general manager go ahead and do a write-up without you looking it over. But I would say, hey, listen, you're obviously want to write this person up. You want to put them on a performance plan. Go ahead and do it. Meaning write it up first, and then let's look at it together before you actually give it to the team member. Okay. You'll see there's a lot of emotion in it. You pull it out, and then boom, you're done. Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions on that? All right. Let's see. Okay. So moving along, we're doing okay on time. Great. So turning around the underperformance. So this is the 4-week plan that is recommended. So this is when somebody is pretty much on their final write-up or performance improvement plan. This is where it's critical that things have to change pretty drastically in the next 4 weeks. Okay. So step number 1 is establishing a foundations. Week 2 is monitoring progress. 3 is continuous improvement and accountability. And 4 is sustaining momentum. I will tell you that all of this is, if I was to give you the cheat sheet, it's what we're supposed to do on a regular basis, just really condensed and like a microscope on them. And making sure it's a microscope on you as well, because you're making sure that you're hitting those follow-ups, you're having those conversations. You're not letting 3 weeks go by before you address something that feels prickly. So it's a commitment, not just to the team member, it's a commitment to their supervisor and or you, the owner. Okay. It's a very important point. So week 1, establishing those foundations. We sit down, everything's written down as we saw there. We discuss the action steps. And I'm always flexible. If we look at that performance improvement plan and they don't agree to some pieces of it for good reason, because you have dialogue about it, make the modification, just right on the fly. That's okay. We just want to make sure it's agreed and everybody understands. Okay. Weekly commitments, establish those commitments. Now, remember, one piece that's not here is you want to understand when they leave that meeting, they understand there is an impact, positive and or negative. This can positively traject their career, or it can end employment with you. So if that's the case, make sure, and I made this mistake before, don't like dance around it. Right? Like, oh, okay, yeah, if it doesn't go well, we'll work it out. We'll figure it out. No, if it doesn't go well, we're going to find a different opportunity on a different team. Because for this play to work and to be natural, by the 4th week, there is no termination required. It's a conversation about you helping them find a job somewhere else. And that's the objective here. That's not the objective to get them to leave. It's to make sure that we are in alignment with what the next steps are. Okay. So that's week 1. Week 2 is you want to sit down again. You got to establish that follow-up rhythm, evaluate what's going well, what's not going well, addressing honored commitments, and of course, closing questions and expectations. Sometimes if we didn't do a great job in session 1, there was no movement. Double check, make sure, adjust the way you say it. If you feel it was agreed upon and they get it and there's no movement, you can actually pause the whole thing and we can end it now. Because if, for example, I'll just give you an example. And we're going back to the calls for some reason, because it's easy. 50 calls. Okay, we're going to have to move that to 50 calls a day. And if after 1 week they move from 2 calls to 4 calls, there's really not a lot to discuss, unless there were some crazy circumstances that occurred. There's really nothing else to talk about. So save your time for somebody who's more interested in learning and growing than the person in front of you. I hate to say it so bluntly, but if they can't move that, then they're just not interested. Okay. Unless, of course, there's some sort of external circumstance. And that's why we sit down and we discuss it, right? Communication, followed by communication. All right. Step 3 here is continuous improvement and accountability. So we're just sitting down again, progress check-in, checking on those commitments. By week 3, you're probably going to get a pretty good indication of whether they're going to hit their targets. Okay. Because you're checking in every week, and that's going to allow you to plan and the company to plan. Week 4 is final progress. This is it. You're going to celebrate the successes and address any remaining challenges. You're going to reflection and goal setting, encourage reflection and future goal setting. So there's going to be 3 things that are going to happen. Okay. This is pretty much what's going to happen. Number 1 is they're going to hit their goals and commitments. Very good. Nice work. Let's continue our employment. Let's move on. And number 2 is they're going to hit their commitments and maybe miss some of their goals, right? They're supposed to sell 20 memberships. They hit 15, but they did hit the calls. They got the leads there. So to get to the things that they could really control, that was in 70% of their control, they hit. That's another option. Last one is they didn't move much towards the goal or the commitment. They didn't really go anywhere. Okay. So anytime someone goes on let me finish my thoughts here. So obviously the decision here has to be to move on. Okay. And at this point, it's not a decision anymore. It's not a decision anymore because the process makes the decision for you and them. Okay. So what I mean by that is a good conversation is, okay, we look at these numbers, we look at what we said we're going to do, and they say, yeah, this is not the right fit for me. And then we depart. Now here, you might extend that conversation. So we're going to give you an extra month. We go another 30 days because you really stepped up. We made some massive improvements. Let's see if we can do that for 2 months in a row. And obviously this one, it's just high fives and let's go. Okay. All right. So understanding that the 3 potential outcomes, backing up to week 1, realizing that number 3 is an actual potential, you got to start doing some planning. And that's where my recommendation is anytime someone goes on a performance improvement plan, you really do want to start looking for that replacement. Now that could sound, oh my goodness, Andy, you're so cutthroat. It's not, because what do you think, just from all of your experience, let's use our chat box on the lower right-hand corner. All right. Don't hit enter though. Just put the number. I like when we do it together. What do you think that when you've put somebody on a performance improvement plan in the past, what was the likelihood of them being able to turn it around? 100%, 50%, 1%, 30%. Put your percentage. Don't hit enter though, because we're all going to do it together. It's going to be fun. What do you think? Chances of them turning it around. And again, the reason they're on this performance improvement plan is you need them to improve their performance because the business is struggling because of their lack of performance. And if they're not going to perform, business is going to continue to struggle. You've got to make some hard decisions. Put the number. What are the chances that you feel in your heart when you put somebody on a performance plan that they actually improve? Go ahead and hit enter now. All right. What do we got here? We got 25, 50, 10, 50, 0. Bridget, you said 0% chance? Oh my goodness. All right. Bridget, tell us, why do you say 0?
So luckily, I've only had to put 2 people on a PIP before. And when it got to that point, it was just clear that they didn't want to work here. So that was the pushing factor. And then both people handed in their resignation within the next week. So
Gotcha.
That's just the experience that I've had.
Yep. No, that's exactly what happens. Sometimes small sample size, but still very true to the results. So I think great job with putting them on that, clear expectations, and they determine themselves. Nice work. Let's see, 35%, 75%. Jessica, the most optimistic in the room. Tell us about 75%.
I've never had to use a performance plan, so that was just a solid yes.
Okay, gotcha. Never. Oh, okay. Is it because you've always had top performers and never had to do it?
No, I've just been in this position for 6 weeks, and the 2
Okay.
coaches that I do have are super awesome.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. Fair enough. Awesome. Chad says 60%. So what I found is there's a 60-40 chance, so 60% chance that the person will make it. And so that means if we're the other side is there's a 40% chance you have an opening. If you're working at Anytime Fitness, you know that one opening in one location does create a pretty big hole. So if there's a 40% chance that it's going to rain, what are you going to do, Bridget?
I'm probably going to bring an umbrella.
You're going to bring an umbrella. Smart, very smart. So if there's a 40% chance you're going to lose a team member, we've got to start looking, and you have 4 weeks to do it. Remember, if you're going to hire somebody, even if you hire them today, and again, a great pipeline, you got 3 people that want the job, you hire them today, they hopefully have another job. So therefore, that's 2 weeks before they can start. And then the onboarding to make them proficient is another 2 weeks. Again, if you don't, but the thing is, in most cases, you don't hire that person today because you're hoping there's a 60% chance. So bottom line is you got to make sure that you're getting that filled. So keep that in mind. It will save you tons of frustration and help you be a bit more profitable. Okay. Okay. We are recapping. So that's the story. So number 1, performance management is a good thing. Remember, A players love performance management. A players love accountability. Where you're going to lose is when you have mediocrity within your organization. It's going to chase out all of your A players, and then your whole organization will be mediocre. So if you've got A players, help them be more successful by eliminating the mediocrity, and that's where performance management comes in. Number 2 is make sure you have clear expectations, and that's going to set your tempo. Clear expectations, and remember that's communication, communication, communication. Number 3 is to document the things that you do. So whatever stage they are, whether it's a verbal, whether it's written, whether it's a final, even if you're just having a casual conversation that you felt was a coaching moment, not even, hey, I just want to give you props on, I was observing how you were working on your lay work with that particular member and how you got them involved. Send them an email with documentation. That's always a good thing. And lastly is be strategic with your team members, performance management. I know it's not always fun to put somebody on a PIP. However, it's going to be one thing that I've learned is when you have an underperformer, and you keep an underperformer, it's holding them back substantially. It's holding them back in order to grow, right? There's been so many times that we've had to exit people and they found something that's a better calling for them. And they just didn't want to do it themselves. They just wanted to let it happen. And when we finally released them, they feel so good about it. I had that in my own experience, right? I've gotten fired a few times in my day in the restaurant business. And that's what allowed me to double down when I lost one of my jobs. Because I used to have 2 restaurant jobs and I was a trainer. And then finally I wasn't great at serving. So I was asked to leave. It was a big menu. Okay. So then I was able to double down on my personal training. And then all of a sudden the rest is history. All right. If you like books, Coaching Salespeople into Sales Champions, great book by Keith Rosen, and Crucial Conversations. Very, very tactical with that crucial conversation, very gritty on how to work through these crucial conversations, starting with CPO. Okay. All right. Remember, if you get stuck, talk to your mastermind coach. They're here to help you. If you don't have one, get one. Next week's masterclass is all about the product. All about the product, specifically personal training is what we're going to be focusing on, from one-on-one to SGT, semi-private. What on earth is the difference? Team, virtual, hybrids, the whole 9 yards. So make sure you join us next Wednesday, July the 2nd at noon. All right.
Led by yours truly.
Yeah. Special teacher next week is Chad, 10X Wallace. Ask him why we call him 10X next week on the call. All right. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.